Good evening, wrestling fans. I am Jeff Upson, joined by Eric Knopsnyder as always. You are now tuned in to the PA Power Hour. And Eric, I feel like it's been a while since I talked to you. What have you been doing? I know you've been going on all your nature walks and all those things. What have you been up to?
Got a little nice weather. Got to get out. We've been cooped up in gyms. Well, some of us have been. Some of us have been cooped up with their brand new baby. So, you've been doing your thing. I'm trying to get out, get a little exercise, get some sunshine. But it's been good.
Well, you look good. You got your Hendo shirt on. Evan Henderson brought home the championship at the last chance qualifier. He's now qualified for the Olympic team trials going down next weekend. And it's nice to see Evan Henderson. In fact, I believe Dyson's going to have an interview with him coming up here soon. But, man, he wrestled well. I thought Chance Marsteller wrestled really well in addition to that. So it was nice to see some Pennsylvania flavor down there.
Absolutely. Great time for them. And great to see those two guys who've been around for a little while and, been through some things, differences for the two of them, the paths they've taken, but nice to see them keep plugging away at it and get a chance. And now they'll be in the Olympic trials.
So tonight's episode, it's going to be a fun-filled episode. And there's one particular facet of the episode that I'm really psyched about, and that's having Tanner Sewell on from Villiage Coaching. And Tanner and I have been talking for several months now about what he's developing down in Virginia, and we felt it was just so important to get this message and get this knowledge out to Pennsylvania wrestlers, because how many wrestlers do we know that are going unrecruited, they're not getting looked at, and all these different things. And because of the depth of Pennsylvania, it's very hard. So I'm really excited to talk to him about what he has going on. We're also going to talk about the state dual team tournament that took place at Cumberland Valley this past weekend. And also we're going to recap last night's King of the Keystone that the Nittany Lion Wrestling Club put on, which was a very cool event. So we got a lot of fun for you here tonight, and just looking forward to talking to Tanner. So Tanner, I'll bring you on, brother. How are you doing? And how's weather? Looks nice down there in Virginia. What's going on down there? I think I muted you. You're gonna have to unmute yourself, Tanner. I believe I muted you.
We were just talking about how professional we are, Jeff.
We were, yeah.
Okay.
All right, we got you. Tanner,
there we go.
Tanner, how's it going? The weather looks really nice down there. Are you sure you're not in Florida?
It's always beautiful right outside of sunny DC. The cherry blossoms just bloom, so it's the time to be in the nation's capital.
Nice. Tanner, just tell me what's going on. Tell us a little bit about yourself, what you got going on down there. I know you have like a bunch of hats that you wear. You're a coach. You're helping out with recruiting. You got all these different things going on. So tell us a little bit about what you are doing.
Yeah. So in a nutshell, I've been coaching I was a head coach for 8 years, club director for 8 years, and during that time, one of my passions has been helping kids who just love wrestling get to the next level. And, Virginia wrestling is nowhere on the same, playing field as Pennsylvania. A lot of our kids start late in the game, freshman year, but they have typically, at least in our pipeline, our Fairfax Nova pipeline, have really just learn to love it. It's become a lifestyle. They can't see themselves living without wrestling. So when they think about college, they want to do it in college. And a lot of kids don't understand that if you have the lifestyle, the grades, and really, frankly, the love for the sport, there's a place for you at the next level. And I learned that early on as a head coach and a club director. And so I really immersed myself into that world of college recruiting, college wrestling recruiting specifically. And we saw some just really phenomenal things happen. And that's, really where my heart is helping wrestlers achieve their goal of competing at the next level, but in a way that sets them up. Really, essentially just using wrestling as a vehicle for their life. And that's what I'm really passionate about. And I discovered that passion as a head coach and discovered that passion as a club director, both of which I love doing. But I've now taken that system, those lessons that I've learned throughout those 8 years, and now turned them into a curriculum.
Right. And you had mentioned the vehicle, right? And you and I have talked about this at length, and there's such a lack of, and you saw it, right? You saw it as a coach, that there was a lack of understanding, a lack of just material, if you will, on how to get recruited. And I believe you said it on your 1-page flyer. It says 2% of the top wrestlers actually get like recruited. And in Pennsylvania, that may be a good handful, right? If we have 350 seniors that are looking to wrestle in college, maybe that is the top 100 or whatever, that is in Pennsylvania. Comparatively speaking, though, there's a lot of wrestlers that just aren't getting looks, and they really don't understand the recruiting process. So you had mentioned like the vehicle to kind of get them there. Talk a little bit more about that and how that's come about, because you kind of have, the roadmap, if you will, of navigating through this pretty complicated process, especially for first-time, college students.
Yeah, the stat that you referred to is, 98% of wrestlers they're not recruited, or at least highly recruited. And there's a distinction between being contacted, being, emailed, called, and then actually being recruited. There is an actual sort of definition of what does it really mean to be recruited. Coaches are casting out large nets, and they're very busy people with lots of responsibility, not to mention their responsibility at home and, with their families. So they're making calls up to 8 o'clock, 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. And, reality is 98% of wrestlers are not recruited in the proper sense of the term. And there's a significant knowledge gap in terms of how to actually do the process, how to actually wrestle in college. Where do I start? What divisions are appropriate? And ultimately, the real fundamental North Star question that we drive home is, where's going to be the best college fit for you? In other words, if wrestling is out of the picture, God forbid you shred your shoulder, shred your knee, are you going to be happy at this institution? And there's just it's a huge kind of there's nothing there. There's not a bridge to get to the other side. There's resources available that really focus on exposure. And exposure is one part of the formula. It's a 4-part formula, and exposure is just one part of it. So exposure is great, but it's not the end-all be-all. And what I mean by that is, how does an athlete communicate with college coaches? How do they reach out to college coaches? How do they get on their radar? How do they demonstrate their value? Because like I said, if a wrestler has, and we draw the analogy that recruiting is like selling a car, and the athlete is the car, and they're selling their car to a college coach. And there's 5 parts to this car. A kid can be a really good wrestler, but if the other 4 parts of their car are not in check, like if their frame is rusting out, then they're not valuable. They're not a high value prospective student athlete is what we call them. So there's a lot of parts to it. There's gaps in understanding of what the recruiting process is. There's gaps in understanding of how to get on coaches' radars. There's gaps in identification, how to appropriately identify colleges that are going to be appropriate for me. There's gaps in expectation management. And like you said, the culminating fact is that in a state like Pennsylvania, especially where you have high quality wrestlers, so many are falling through the cracks because of those knowledge gaps. So that's where the Recruiting Accelerator program and Villiage Coaching the program's called Recruiting Accelerator, but the umbrella organization is called Villiage Coaching, where we come in and really bridge those gaps. What we don't focus on is paid exposure opportunities and things like that. The reality is athletes can do that stuff on their own, and we teach them how to do it. So we are incredibly unique in the marketplace. I don't know of any other service that's doing what we're doing.
And you and I had talked about, and you mentioned it earlier about setting them up for life. And, I keep on going back to watching the NCAAs. They kept on playing that commercial and over that said like 90% of student athletes don't go professional in their sport. And, they had all these, athletes that were, and I remember their names, I remember watching them, and, they're like cardiologist, architect. And you kind of look at it like this with wrestling. You're not gonna, there's a very few number of wrestlers that are gonna go compete, let's say professionally, like go to the Olympics or try for an Olympic team, work out an RTC. And you and I had talked about a story of a wrestler who went to Johns Hopkins, right? And giving them the vehicle. Wrestling was that vehicle that got them to that university and that institution that is world renowned. And can you just talk a little bit about those success stories, if you will, of times where you said, wow, look at this kid, he's set up now because he went to Johns Hopkins and wrestling was the vehicle that got him there.
Sure. That kid that you're referring to, his name's Elliott Lee. He's a 74-pounder at Johns Hopkins right now. And this story is mind-blowing, frankly. I mean, there's a few stories that are mind-blowing and that really made me realize that, wow, I'm doing something incredibly unique. It's working. And why not apply these methods and these, this knowledge, right? And scale it so kids across the country can access it. And the story of Elliott is just one of many, but it's really a remarkable story because it really drives home the point that being a good wrestler is important, especially at the Division I level. Make no mistake. I think we all know that. If you're in Pennsylvania, you have a very keen awareness of this fact. But it's not the only thing. And I think we so often forget that in a case like Elliott never qualified for the Virginia State tournament.
Wow.
Put that in perspective.
Yeah.
The Virginia State tournament.
Right.
We have 6 classifications. All right. He was a great athlete. Really solid athlete. Started really late. Started his freshman year. Okay. Really didn't catch fire until his sophomore, junior year, and came to this conclusion that I can't live without wrestling coach. The reality is that Elliott lived a phenomenal lifestyle. He had phenomenal academic habits. He was ridiculously coachable, a phenomenal teammate, and had outstanding character. And this was demonstrated in all facets of his life. He was not a good wrestler. Okay. He did not qualify for the Virginia State tournament. However, he had some intangibles, had some athletic ability, and really loved wrestling. Coach Keith Norris at Johns Hopkins, very phenomenal coach, 3-dimensional coach, amazing human being, sees this. And of course, I'm coaching Elliott on, Elliott, here's how we go through this. Here's how we're going to show Coach Norris our value. And we build a relationship. He builds a relationship with Coach Norris at Johns Hopkins. And that's where he wanted to go. He wanted to go there to study biochemical engineering. He applies to, this is another fact, don't fall out of your seat. He applies to UVA and Virginia Tech, okay? 2 outstanding state schools here in Virginia. He does not get in to either school, but he got accepted into Johns Hopkins.
What? That's mind-blowing.
Well, it is. It's completely mind-blowing. And here's why he got accepted in Johns Hopkins. He demonstrated his value to Coach Norris. He met the basic academic requirements. He had 4 of the 5 parts of his car in outstanding condition. Coach Norris was willing to invest in him in a slot to get into the school. And that's something that a lot of people don't know about, is these high-level little Ivy Division III institutions like a Hopkins, Washington and Lee, Case Western, Williams, Stevens, all of these other really high-powered elite institutions, their wrestling coaches have slots. They can advocate for you in the admissions office, provided that you're a high-value car and that they want to invest in you. So there are no D3 scholarships, but there is a way for a Division III coach to invest in athletes. So it is a competitive advantage if it's done appropriately. And we've seen that not only at, NAIA levels, D2 levels, but especially, that there's a very unique D3 model. And yeah, so that's one of the stories. It's Elliott.
Tanner, this whole process, I think, is confusing enough for, as Jeff said, for parents and student athletes and people who want to go on and compete in college. But how much more difficult is it right now, being everything that we've gone through with COVID, being how difficult it is for coaches to figure out what their roster size is and what they're looking for? I mean, this seems like a time right now where it's got to be more confusing than ever to try to go through this process.
You're 1,000% correct. It is now. It was difficult before, and now it's even more difficult. I was actually talking to Ian Assail the other day, and y'all know Ian, a longtime PA coach, one of my favorite coaches in the country. Always been a huge fan of Ian, and I had a really great phone conversation with him the other day, and he was like, it's great that you offer your coaching calls into the wrestler's college career, because there's going to be a lot of kids in the transfer portal. Because at least our D1 kids, some of them, I mean, they might have taken and visited the campus, but at the D3 level, the D2 level, the NAI level, I mean, those coaches are having free reign right now. I mean, they can do anything and everything they want. They don't have nearly the restrictions that our D1 coaches have. I mean, their hands are practically tied at this point. But yeah, it is more difficult right now, and all the more reason to really invest in something that's going to help you figure out what's going to be the best fit, especially if you're a senior. If you're a junior, I think you're going to be okay. Maybe, depending on how things play out.
Yeah.
But seniors, at the senior class is really at a disadvantage.
So let me ask you this. So I'm let's say a junior or senior. I got 5 parts of my car that are in decent shape. They're pretty good. But I have not received a lot of interest from college coaches. I haven't, gotten a lot of attention, so to say. I obviously haven't been able to visit a lot of college campuses because of COVID. And I go into your website and I look at everything. What should I expect as a student athlete who has a passion for wrestling? Maybe not maybe I'm a regional qualifier in Pennsylvania. Good test scores, good student. I live a good life, but I just haven't been getting those looks. I come to you. What is it that with not going into the brass tacks, but what is it that I can expect from something like the Villiage Coaching, and what can I expect from in talking to you?
Well, the first thing is that if a kid is in that situation, or if they actually are getting recruited, frankly, I think there's value on both ends. But specifically alluding to your example, the first thing is that they can schedule a free 30-minute complimentary breakthrough call with me to just brainstorm and actually determine whether or not the program's a good fit for them. But what they can expect from the program is basically a foolproof step-by-step system to how to find their best college fit. It's foolproof. It's you do X, Y, and Z. The chances of you getting on the radars that you need to be on and getting accepted into the schools that are going to be the best fit for you are significantly more likely. So of course there's no guarantees, right? It really is completely contingent on the effort that a kid puts in. Like it does take a lot of work on part of the kid. And I think that's a misunderstanding. I would call it a myth almost of the recruiting process. I can't tell you how often I hear this. I'm going to let them come to me. I hear that all the time. I hear it at least 3 to 4 times a week. I'm going to wrestle at this tournament, and I'm going to let them come to me. It is the most false belief. It's completely false. It just doesn't work. They don't come to you. If you're a junior, okay, if I'll tell you what, here's a point blank gauge, right, as to whether or not you're really probably going to be getting recruited. There's always exceptions to this rule. But if you just graduated your sophomore year and it's June 16th and you have not been contacted, you're not on any Division I radars.
Yeah.
At least in any significant degree. Mm-hmm. You might be on a list. You might be on a call list. They might hit you up in the fall, but you're not a high target recruit at the D1 level.
Right.
If you're all the way into your junior year and it's right now, it's the spring, and you have not been seriously contacted organically, then that method does not work. So it's, unless you're a top 100 kid, the method does not work. The recruiting is a means of self-marketing. Like, you have to market yourself. You have to recruit yourself. That's the only way that it's done to achieve the outcome of finding your best college fit. You can wait around all day and you might get some hits from some schools, right? But some schools might demonstrate some interest. You do really well at a couple tournaments, whatever, you might get some hits. But the question is, are those schools the best fit for you? Are you just kind of waiting for people to come to you and then just kind of assuming that those schools are going to be the best fit, that you're going to be happy at these schools even without wrestling? Probably not. It's not statistically in your favor. So it's about creating the biggest pool that you possibly can, and you being the driver of the ship and picking the schools, right? And then recruiting yourself. Because the reality is that if your car is valuable enough and you're a high enough value prospective student athlete, okay, and of course there's other contingencies outside of your control, like weight class needs, money, if that's in play, all kinds of other stuff. But if those other things match up, you will get recruited. It's just a fact.
Tanner, for parents, it sounds like it's almost like they would look at it as sending out resumes. Like, you're not going to just say, hey, I'm going to wait for some job hunter to come and find me before I look for a better job. You know, you're going to be looking and seeing what's out there and say, hey, I'm going to send out a resume and say, hey, I'm a good fit for you. This would be a nice spot for me.
1,000%, Eric. That's exactly right. And you know, Eric, here's the interesting part about this. We're not, obviously job is really important. We're dealing with where a kid's going to spend the next 4 to 5 years of their life. It's going to potentially determine how they set up the rest of their life. So we're dealing with the absolute most important decision that an adolescent can make. And I would say 75 to 85% of families treat it as, I'm going to let them come to me. And I say, well, that's just not a very effective strategy.
And Eric kind of hit on this. Eric, can you go back to your recruiting days? Because I remember we used to always talk about this, back when you were recruited, Eric, the differences in today versus back then.
Oh, my goodness. I mean, I didn't make a decision until after my high school season was over as a senior. Back then it was you wait until the end. And like, I did have a brother who was actually really active in sending out almost like resumes, talk to me about coaches or colleges I might interested in, and he sent some stuff out and, tried to get them to take a look at me, being from a small school and, not a household name by any means. But it's just, I mean, now you're looking at it, and if a kid that's really good, as you said, hasn't been contacted as a junior, you're like, okay, you got to get your work, you got your work cut out for you, because these coaches are already on it at that point. It's not waiting until the end of their senior season to make a decision now.
Eric, that's another really what you alluded to. Like there's so many kids, I hear this all the time from parents. I have probably 5 to 10 coaching calls, like complimentary breakthrough calls with parents around the country. And one of the things that I often hear is, well, my kid's coach wrestled at, I'm going to say, Chapel Hill, and he knows the staff at Chapel Hill really well. Or my kid's coach wrestled at NC State and knows Pat, really well, or knows Adam really well, or Donnie. And so they're going to call them for my kid, and then my kid's going to get an in because they know the staff. And I'm like, the reality is this: they don't want to hear from them. The only time they want to hear from the coach is if they're interested in the kid. If they're interested in the kid and the kid shows that they have the value, then they'll talk to the coach. Really. I mean, not in every situation, but in most cases, that's how it is. I can tell you Frank Beasley is a great friend of mine, very close with me, and that's a strategy. He's one of the best recruiters in the United States, and most of the time he wants to talk to high school coaches after he's interested in the kid, and after he's talked to the kid, and after he's vetted the kid. What if the kid is this arrogant, sending an arrogant email? I'm going to be your next national champion at George Mason University. You need to recruit me. Can we talk about my scholarship? Yeah, kids send emails like that regularly, and it's mind-blowing. So what if the kid's a complete, off the wall and not so, or maybe Frank just doesn't want the kid? He's not going to want to talk to me. Why is he going to waste his time talking to the high school coach in that situation? I mean, their time. I think this is something that we were talking about earlier. Is all coaches, all wrestling coaches, regardless of division, are incredibly busy. But these Division I coaches are just insanely busy in ways that most people will never understand unless they're in the profession. And so this idea that I'm going to send an email to the coach and send this arrogant email, or just one email, why didn't they contact me? Why didn't this person contact me? The number of emails these people receive every day is exponentially more than the average person.
Yeah. And I love Frank Beasley. Eric and I have had the pleasure of getting to know Frank very, very well. In fact, in Fargo one year at the airport, he drove us to our Airbnb from the airport, because we're like, we're gonna get an Uber, and he's like, are you sure? Are you sure you don't want to ride? We're like, all right, give us a ride. So such
first
a great
ever guest on the podcast too, right?
He was up there. Yeah, he was up there as one of our.
Like the first.
Yeah, he was. And Tanner, you had talked about this before with bombarding people with emails and things like that, and I think that's kind of what you alluded to is how you're kind of playing matchmaker, but you're also just kind of giving a roadmap to say, hey, this is, we didn't talk about grants. Like what about grants? What about different things that can help me get in? What are different avenues to really try to appeal to not only the coach, but also the university as a whole. And I feel like there's so many layers to this, right? And I know we don't have enough time to go through all the layers, but there's so many different layers here. It's can be a little overwhelming, and not only for a parent, but, a high school coach, a wrestler who hasn't had any older brothers like Eric talked about. I mean, it's like, where do you even start? I don't know. I mean, I feel like it's me as a father. I'm waiting for the manual to come in the mail to tell me like how to be a father. And like, they don't teach you that. You just say, hey, here's your kid. And you go home from the hospital and you're like, okay, what are we doing here? It's almost like, there's no manual for college recruiting when it comes to wrestling. Would you agree with that?
1,000%. And the quote unquote manuals that are out there are not manuals at all. I mean, the amount of money that's being made annually on paid exposure driven services, I will not name any by name, but they're very prominent, and people invest in these services a lot. When I ask on coaching calls, and there's 2 points I want to hit here outside of this, but when I ask on coaching calls, have you invested in any other service to help facilitate your child's admissions and recruiting process? I typically, 60, 70% of the time get a yes. And it's an exposure-driven service, meaning that your child creates a profile and this organization sends out emails to college coaches with their profile. I asked, have you had a good return on that investment? The answer is traditionally no. And it's because it's not a roadmap. Like I said, exposure is just one piece of the formula. It's important, but it's not the most important. And it's about the roadmap, and it's about building capacity with the athletes to be able to do it themselves. Because college coach, as we all know, is not investing in the parent. They're not investing in the kid's high school coach. They're not investing in their friend's brother's cousin who wrestled at the school and knows the coach. They're investing in the athlete. And so if the athlete cannot demonstrate the value that's proportionate to the investment, they're not going to get it. And so yes, it is a roadmap. Literally, it is a literal roadmap that I literally have checklists for every grade level. Say, if you go through, and this is your 12-month task, right? To go through and complete these checklists, you can schedule your 15-minute call with me whenever you want to help you navigate it. Here's where you need your parents' help. Here's what you can do on your own. Here's where you'll need me. Boom, boom, boom. You go through this, you follow the process diligently, and boom, here's your chance. But one of the interesting thing about that is it really tests how bad a kid wants to wrestle in college, because it's work.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of kids who are like, yeah, I want to wrestle in college. Yeah, I want to wrestle in college. Do you just want to wrestle in college because you want to have like a signing day or like something like that? Or do you want to wrestle in college to make your parents happy? Do you wrestle in college because it's something that you're just naturally good at? I mean, why do you really want to do it? And the course, although it's not overwhelming because the kids are student athletes and they have things they have to do and focus on. But it really tests the ones who are like, okay, you sure you want to wrestle in college? You can't do 30 minutes of work outside of the class and then schedule a 15-minute call with me. Are you sure this is what you want to do? Because if you can't do that, and you can't do the process right, or at least give it your best, are you sure you want to wrestle in college? But the other thing that you brought up that I thought was really fascinating is high school coaches. I mean, really, I'm a high school coach myself. Fortunately for me, it's just something I was just able to, I just immersed myself into. But college coaches don't have the time to guide each and every one of their athletes through this process. And that's not their fault. That's just the nature of the job. I mean, any of us who have ever coached at any level, especially, being a head high school wrestling coach, it's just not. I mean, you're getting paid pennies on the job, pennies on the hour. And then, you're supposed to help kids navigate this incredibly challenging, difficult, confusing college recruiting process. So the way that I see this is really as a means of supplementing the hard work that high school coaches are doing around the country. And these high school coaches are really pouring into kids and really doing it most of the time out of who they are, what kind of person they are, and the kindness of their heart. And it really hurts to see in some circumstances where all of their hard work isn't done in vain, but like that they, I want to see their kids be able to go to the next level. They want to see their kids go to the next level, but they don't have the time, energy, resources to do that. And so I really see this as a means of saying, hey, let's put all of your hard work on display and showcase it. Let's put it in the marketplace and really shine it up and get it out there so your kids can go to the next level.
I love hearing you talk about that, because it makes it less confusing and less complicated when you hear all these different things. And I wish I had this when I was in high school, and I can't imagine how many wrestlers are out there listening and are saying, oh my gosh, like I this is me. I am that wrestler who I want to wrestle in college because I love the sport. I may not be a state champion, but I'm a pretty darn good wrestler. I want to go get a good education. I want to go, do this in my future life. Okay, perfect. And I know we're going to be working together for in the future, Tanner. I know we're going to, really get into the Pennsylvania market. But say I am a kid right now in Pennsylvania, a senior who has not been recruited. How would I go about getting your services? What do I need to do? What's it look like for me, and where do I go? What do I do? I'm interested.
Sure. So the first thing is go to village-coaching.com/schedule and just schedule a call with me. It's a free 30-minute call. There's no commitment required. Schedule a free call and we'll talk about, I'll ask a bunch of questions. I want to know a little about you, know a little about your situation, know a little about what you're looking for. And really ultimately will determine whether or not you're a good fit for the Recruiting Accelerator program. And if you are, answer any questions that I can help you with.
Okay.
And really just to add on to that, I think it's imperative that kids start sooner than later. There's this understanding that, well, I'll start when I'm a junior. That's a terrible idea. Start when you're a freshman. That is the best time to start a recruiting cohort, is when you're a freshman, because the services apply through the duration of your high school career. So it's a one-time, lifetime deal.
Yeah.
It's not like once you're done with the Recruiting Accelerator, it's over. Once that's over, you can recycle through a program again. Or if you don't want to recycle through a program again and you've got all the resources and assistance and tools and roadmaps that you need, you're still really expected to keep scheduling the 15-minute calls with me really throughout the duration of your high school career, even after a child commits and signs, because there's things that still need to be done after that commitment to ensure the value is upheld, right? There's a lot, again, another misunderstanding, and I don't want to go down a rabbit hole in this, but it is important for families to know that even after the commitment or the signing or the school commitment is made, it is possible for a kid to completely put a target on his back with a coach. If a kid's not turning paperwork in on time, if a kid's not communicating, if a kid's not responding to emails on time, it's not like, I draw the distinction of, it's like leading up to the courtship, right? Or like the engagement. And then once you sign or you commit or whatever, you're married. And then, once you're married, it's married. I mean, the transfer portal, but the reality is that's how things happen. That's how, I don't say that coaches treat kids like crap after they sign, but it's like, I got you.
Yeah.
I got you.
Yeah.
We're married now.
Yeah. That's a great analogy. I see Eric nodding his head. He's like, "Yep, that's it. I know exactly what you're talking about." Well, Tanner, we definitely got to have you on again, and I want to talk more about this, and I'd really like to get some Pennsylvania wrestlers signed up for your courses, and really, just in the couple hours that we've been on the phone, I've learned so much about it, and I live it, and I've had parents email me, I've had coaches email me, I've had wrestlers email me or message me and say, hey, my kid needs, can you help my kid? And I feel like it's our duty as PA Power Wrestling, as a media company covering high school wrestling, is to get these kids' names out there in front of coaches, and get them to you to say, okay, because I'm not the expert, you are, and to say, hey, these are some of the things that you need to do. Like you said, a checklist of things. So, I know I speak for Eric when I say it was a pleasure just kind of going through this and talking about this, because it's a lot to wrap your brain around, right? And it can get a little overwhelming. So I just appreciate all the time and effort that you've put into building Villiage Coaching, and building out these cohorts, and really helping student athletes achieve, like you said, sometimes lifelong dreams, and setting up for life, because there's life after college, and there's careers, and there's all these different things like marriage. Like it's not over once you just say I do. There's a lot more you got to do. So I just appreciate your time here tonight, Tanner, and we're gonna look forward to working together, and for everyone listening, we're gonna be blasting out some information for you. So don't think this is just a one and done. And, we're going to give you all the information where you need to go, what you need to do, and things like that to help guide you, because, there's a lot of Pennsylvania wrestlers out there that I know are going to fall through the cracks. And that's kind of what we're trying to avoid. So Tanner, thank you very much for all your work.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much. Truly you're a phenomenal resource and asset to the wrestling community. And thank you so much for giving back in the way that you do. I'm really grateful for the relationship that I have with you guys, and I'm really looking forward to continue to work with you and help some kids out in Pennsylvania. So I'm very grateful for what you guys do as well.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Tanner.
See you guys.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Tanner. So Eric, and it's funny when we talk about recruiting, and it's, like you talked about when you were in going into college versus like when I was going into college. I mean, there's just there's such a gap there, right? There's a gap there. And I always publish those top recruiting classes of, 2021, 2022. And there's normally like 300 names on that list. And I would say only 100 to 150 of them are at the end, they're actually, have a college name next to them, because there's just so many good wrestlers that I believe fall through the cracks in Pennsylvania. And when I met Tanner and talked to Tanner back in December, as soon as he said it, it's like a light bulb went off in my head. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I immediately thought of like 5 wrestlers' names off the bat that I knew would benefit from a program like this, because there's not a whole lot out there. So I don't know. What were your thoughts, Eric?
Well, like you said, I mean, there's so many opportunities out there that I think go unrealized, both from the guys who want to wrestle in college and don't end up doing so for one reason or another. And frankly, there are a lot of schools out there that want to find these kids.
Yep.
I mean, I've got a lot of college coaches, not necessarily Division I coaches, but lower levels that are contacting me and saying, hey, do you have anybody, like, we're out of state and we've got a great opportunity for some kids, but they just don't know about us because we're not right in their backyard.
And I don't want to go down a rabbit hole with this, but I feel like there's a misconception here in Pennsylvania that I'm a Pennsylvania wrestler. I'm going D1, right? I'm absolutely going D1. I won a PA state title, or I'm a PA state medalist. And the reality is there's only a certain amount of scholarship money available to wrestlers in college that, yes, Pennsylvania historically has a larger amount of Division I wrestlers. There's no doubt about it. But when it comes down to the numbers, we have 8 state medalists in 13 weight classes in 2 different classes. Not all of those state medalists are going to go Division I. And I feel like there's always this kind of, I don't know, I want to call it a misconception, but there's a lot of people who say, I'm too good for D2, or I'm too good for D3. And when Tanner and I were talking last week or the week before about some of the guys he works with, and Joe Kemmerer's name came up. And if you guys remember him, Joe Kemmerer was a state champ for Crestwood, undefeated state champion. He beat Seth Ciasuli in the state finals. He wrestled in both Division II and Division I, and he has a really nice story about the differences between the two of them. And I just think there's a lot of times misconception where Pennsylvania wrestlers think like, if I'm not getting called by Penn State, what good is it? And like you said, there's so many Division II, Division III colleges out there that would just die for some Pennsylvania wrestlers. and good Pennsylvania wrestlers. Cody Law, right, goes to Penn State, then goes to Pitt, Johnstown, and wins a national championship. I mean, and now he's going in MMA. So, not saying that it's because of Pitt, Johnstown, but it's, he found his path, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And on the other end of that, going back even further, is Jody Strittmatter, who went Division II. And I know, Coach Pecora always tells guys, hey, look, if you come here and you have success, you win national titles, I'll help you go to Division I if that's what you want to do. And that's exactly what he did with Jody. Jody won a couple Division II national titles, and Coach Pecora was right there with him saying, hey, let's look at Oklahoma State, let's look at Iowa, let's look at the top programs at the time, and that's kind of what he did. I mean, coaches will work with you if you're that good and that's your dream. They'll say, yeah, I'll help you get there. I'll take 2 years of Jody Strittmatter. Who wouldn't?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, and Jody is a perfect example of that. A guy who started out there, probably, and you look at why that is, and Jacob B. Ely is another example, a Hopewell guy who started out, was a regional qualifier in District 7, but then all of a sudden burst on the scene and wins a state title, and maybe he's not getting the looks that he wanted, right? And now he's at UPJ. He was an All-American this year, and I just look at that and say, man, there's so much opportunity here for Pennsylvania wrestlers. There's so many just chances, and how many get missed, right? How many guys slip through the crack and fall through? So, but not to spend all night on it. I just wanted to talk about that a little bit more, Eric. And as I mentioned earlier, we're going to be giving a lot of information out on the Villiage Coaching and Tanner and everything that he's doing and how to get set up with that, because personally I think if you're interested in wrestling college and you just feel kind of lost a little bit, this is a huge roadmap for you and really helps. I mean, like I said, I feel like I'm pretty well versed in how the things work because of just doing PA Power Wrestling, but after talking to him for several hours, I've learned so many different things, and I'm just like, I can't wait to tell this father or this person or this wrestler, because I didn't know this stuff. So it's very beneficial. Eric, it's a weird time in Pennsylvania wrestling because the individual state tournament wrapped up, NCAA's wrapped up, but then we went back to wrestling, right? We had some a weird week of wrestling where we had some district dual championships, but then we had the PIAA state dual championship at Cumberland Valley High School. So we had the final 4 teams in both classes go to Cumberland Valley, meet up for a reduced or condensed state dual tournament, if you will. And as usual, for the 5th year in a row, Reynolds Raiders, they come out with their 5th straight PIAA state title. It's quite impressive what they did for several reasons. One is, Reynolds is a team that, when they won this first state title of 5 in a row, none of those wrestlers are there now, right? They have done this 5 different times with 5 different teams with different superstars, right? So that's very impressive in its own right. The other impressive piece of this is the last 4 years, they've wrestled Southern Columbia. So not only is Reynolds really good, but Southern Columbia is so darn close that they're better than every other, district out there or team out there, that they've come that close to Reynolds. I mean, if you look at this, Eric, it's like good for Reynolds, but also good for Southern Columbia.
Oh yeah, Southern Columbia has been phenomenal. It's got to be really frustrating for them that they can't quite get over that Reynolds hump. They're close, but just can't quite get over that. But some great action there this weekend at Cumberland Valley.
So if you look at the quarterfinals, so Reynolds beats Forest Hills, Burrell beats Chestnut Ridge in a great 32-31 match. We talked about that on More Up last week. Southern Columbia beat Notre Dame Green Pond. Boiling Springs beat Lackawanna Trail. And then in the semifinals, Southern Columbia beat Boiling Springs 31-22. Not a huge surprise there. And Reynolds beat Burrell 35-30. Burrell had a heck of a tournament, I thought. I thought giving up a forfeit every single dual meet, regardless. Already down 6, I thought they wrestled Reynolds very, very well. At the beginning, it was looking pretty good. Nick Salerno got a win over Kane Kettering. Aaron Edwards got a major. Ian Oswalt got a major on Alex Ishko. And after those 3, I'm thinking, man, Reynolds is in a little bit of a trouble here. AJ Corrado got a major, but then the biggest match for me was Jalen Wagner of Reynolds at 160 pounds. He pins Damian Barr. It was 3-1. He gets a reversal in the 3rd period, turns him to his back, and pins him with like 13 seconds left in the match. That was a huge, huge swing for Reynolds, and really I think that was probably the determining factor of why Reynolds was able to win that match. Reynolds did forfeit 126 after Gary Steen picked up a pin over Nico Farah at 120 pounds, but really good wrestling there from Burrow and Reynolds, Eric.
Yeah, and as you said, that pin by Wagner, in the end, those 3 points might not have made the difference, but I mean, there's definitely momentum in dual meets, and that clearly put the momentum on Reynolds' side. And if they weren't already feeling invincible after 4 straight titles, when you get a situation like that, you're like, okay, yeah, this is why we've won 4 straight titles and why we're going to win a 5th, because you get moments like that you get that pin that really kind of gets you going.
And I feel like every year they have somebody like that. Every year they have somebody that delivers in those high pressure, high need moments. And Jalen Wagner just he was one of those guys that delivered for him. And you go into the finals, 31-22. Reynolds won that. It started off with 3 wins in a row for Southern Columbia. So Ian Yoder gets a major. Patrick Edmondson gets a pin over Clayton Rhodes. Brandon Gedman has a very good win over Alex Ishko, 5-1. And then Caden Berger and Garrett Garcia match up at 160 pounds. Now, Caden Berger, 3-time state medalist, senior. Garrett Garcia, the youngest of the Garcia brothers. Caden Berger goes to ultimate tiebreaker with him, beats him 4-3. That was a pretty big match, right? I feel like
that was a huge one.
That was a huge win for Reynolds, because it stopped the bleeding. Because you knew from Southern Columbia, 138 through 189 are really, really solid. You go from Garcia to Wesley Barnes. So if you didn't get one in there between 138 and 189, you're that backside, you're putting a lot of pressure on those guys to get bonus points. So Caden Berger getting that win was huge, because then Gavin Garcia pins Jalen Wagner. Wesley Barnes decisions Dora DeCarmen 7-3. And Cole Toy had a tough match with Colin Sharo at 215, 5-4. That kind of switched things up for me when I saw that. Guy John Danello gets a pin at 285. Logan Hammerschmidt, who I thought really wrestled well throughout the individual and team postseason, got a fall at 106. Chase Bell got a major over Brady Feast at 113. And all of a sudden, you got into the kind of meat of Reynolds' lineup, ending with Gary Steen and Kane Kettering. So Reynolds ends up winning their 5th straight. Now, I ran some numbers here, Eric, and if you look at the number of state finals Reynolds has been in. Now, remember, the state dual tournament has only been around since 1999. Reynolds has appeared in 12 state finals appearances since 1999. Not in the state tournament, finals. They've been in the finals 12 times. They've come away with 8 titles out of 12 times. So you went to the finals 12 times. 8 out of 12 times you came away with that championship title. 8 is the most out of any school in the history of Pennsylvania. Bethlehem Catholic has 7 titles to their name. That's really impressive. I mean, I don't think we say it enough. Reynolds is a dang dynasty.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. And I know there's some rumors out there about how things, how kids end up at Reynolds and all that. But don't forget, they are a public school. To me, doing this as a public school is really, really impressive, because you do have boundaries. And I know, like I said, there are going to be people that say, well, they got this guy that wasn't supposed to be there and that guy and all that. But still, they're operating within the parameters of a public school, whereas a Bethlehem Catholic can kind of draw from all over the Bethlehem area there, the Lehigh Valley.
Yeah, and I'll say to those naysayers, every single good program in the state of Pennsylvania has somebody who did not come up through their quote youth program. Okay, that's just the bottom line. And whether that's because families are moving in, because of wrestling, because of education, whatever it is, there is not, I would say, and maybe don't quote me on this, but there's probably not a top 10 team in each division, AA or AAA, that does not have a kid who came not, all their kids came through their youth program from, 8 years old all the way through. That's not realistic. That's not feasible. So yeah, I mean, we can get into that whole thing another time. I don't want to go into the debate of, who recruits and who doesn't and things like that. Reynolds did what Reynolds had to do. Now let's go ahead to AAA. And Waynesburg did exactly what we expected them to, and my alma mater, Central Dauphin, just got absolutely whooped up on, 42-3. Hey, I mean, we kind of all saw that coming. And I said this to you. I said this to last week. I said
you were mailing them the trophy months ago.
Mailed them the trophy months ago. Did you see they had a banner pre-made? They had a banner.
No.
Did you see that? They had a picture of a banner that said 2021 PIAA state champions. I mean, they didn't get it made in that 3-minute time span that they took the photo that they won. They had that made months ago. You know why? Because they were that certain that they're going to win. All they had to do was show up. And I hate to say it, but that's kind of what we said, right? We knew Waynesburg was just going to come in and dominate, 50-13 over Williamsport, 42-3 over Central Dauphin in the finals. It was not close. Waynesburg dominated. And that's basically the story of the tournament. Central Dauphin had a good match with Springford in the semifinals, and even my former head coach Jeff Swigert, I read in the paper his quote that said, of his 37 plus years in coaching, he says, I don't think I've ever seen a more balanced team than that Waynesburg team, and that's saying something because Jeff Swigert has coached against the best teams in the state of Pennsylvania, the Central Mountains with the Alton brothers, all those teams, the Franklin Regionals, the Cannon Max with their loaded lineups. So that's saying something. Waynesburg is probably one of the best teams of the decade with all their talent, Eric.
I think absolutely. I don't think the decade is going far enough. I mean, I think that this would have to be one of the, as he said, one of the most balanced. I don't know if they match up with a North Allegheny from the late 80s, early 90s there, or Franklin Regional maybe in terms of star power. Franklin Regional is going to be hard to top in that department. But for, especially 1 through 13, I mean, that's an incredible lineup that they got all those guys to fit in there that are all that talented.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right when it talks about the different classes, and let's not forget Waynesburg is a AA school that elects to wrestle up in AAA. Now, I always say that people are like, well, yeah, but look, they have all these kids from all over the place. Okay, I get it, all right, but the bottom line is they are a AA size school wrestling up in AAA. And quite frankly, I think they're one of the top teams in the nation. 5 individual state finalists. 3 champions. I mean, they're doing something pretty right down there in Waynesburg, and whether that's by virtue of the feeder program, getting good guys into the room, it's huge for Waynesburg, and and they return a lot too. Yeah, last year we said that where they return their whole lineup, but they still return a lot next year, so they're not going away anytime soon, Eric. So that wasn't the only action we had. We also had last night. The Nittany Lion Wrestling Club put on a wonderful card called the King of the Keystone. Now, you and I, Eric, have talked about it for years. The Challenge of Champions, which, RIP, that was back in 2000. It was an event you wrestled in. You were in the prelim. You warmed up the crowd a little bit. It's an event that I
put him to sleep maybe, but
No, of course not. It's an event that I wish would be resurrected, and the Nittany Lion Wrestling Club and what they've been doing, of course, on Rockfin and all their cards. They put together a card last night that I thought was a great matchup, and it was called the King of the Keystone. Now they weren't able to get AA champs versus AAA champs. That and it's with the Classic being this week. It's hard to get those guys to commit. The time frame, the windows are so tight these days with trying to get wrestling done out after the season, especially with this season, being that it was so delayed and because of all the issues that we had with COVID, it's tough to try to get those AAA versus AA state champions going. But they did have a good card, Eric. So let's go over that card now. I'll pop it up on the screen there. So we are going to admit that AAA did get the win, right, Eric?
I'm disputing that. More double-A wrestlers won matches last night than triple-A wrestlers.
Yeah, but the two double-A wrestlers, that's not fair. I mean, and technically Eric Gibson
I'm just
wrestled
saying,
for
more double-A wrestlers won matches in this event than triple-A wrestlers.
Okay. I mean, if that's the way you want to say it, then that's fine. That's like
no,
you're
right.
You're
right.
Now and you complained.
AAA did win.
You complained earlier today about IA Wrestle sending
just
out.
Sticking up for my double-A guys.
You said
they won the duel.
This is fake news. IA Wrestle sent out and said Spencer Lee wins the Hodge. Well, technically, he kind of won the Hodge, but he also is sharing that with Gable Stevenson. It's co-Hodges. By you saying Double-A had more winners.
I'm just kidding. I freely admit that the AAA won the duel.
We got to be careful because if Greg Warnock's listening, he's. I don't know if you heard the last show that we did, Eric, but he was all over you. Talking about Toy Story. I don't know if you watched it. Did you not watch it? Because
I didn't see it. I missed it.
Wow.
So wow.
Go back and watch it, Eric. Go back and watch it, and you may be singing a different tune when it comes to Greg Warnock. Just saying.
Wow, and he came after me last night in the group text.
Wait.
I didn't know he was bashing me publicly. Now.
Oh yeah, publicly. Oh yeah.
Wow.
Go back and watch it. It's good. The king of the Keystone. I'm going to have a hard time saying that. The king of the Keystone, 113 pounds, Cooper Hornack from Burrow, beats Tyler Chappell from Seneca Valley 3-1. Tyler Chappell, it was very similar to his state semifinals with Caden Williams. He's on bottom. He's having a hard time getting out. He going back and reaching for the head, almost getting a defensive fall, but unable to get out. Cooper Hornack, freshman from Burrow, state runner-up this year to Louis Gill. He's able to get the 3-1 win. I thought that was a good match. Mason Gibson versus Aidan Lewis. Now, this was 130 pounds. Mason Gibson weighed in at like 124. Aidan Lewis a little bit higher. But Mason, I thought, had a little bit of trouble with Aidan Lewis, who got the opening takedown. But Mason does what he does best, and that's win. He won 4-3 in that match. Eric, what were your takeaways from watching Mason there?
Yeah, I expected that to be a little bit more open. What we're used to seeing out of Mason is going out and getting a takedown or two in the first against a really good guy and then just kind of opening it up as it goes. But credit to Aidan Lewis. He, as you said, he got that opening takedown, which took a while to fight for and eventually got it. And then he was very, very close to getting a reversal in the third that would have tied the match up. Ended up only getting an escape out of it. But, I mean, that was a really tough match for Mason Gibson, and that's a credit to Aidan Lewis and the level that he's on that I think he probably doesn't get enough recognition for.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a combination of a few things. Aidan Lewis was a little ticked off that he didn't make it to the medal round of states after being a state runner-up the year prior. Probably had a chip on his shoulder, maybe a little bit bigger, but I think he just was able to slow. I think he had a great game plan. I think he was well coached in the sense that he knew what he had to do against Mason Gibson. I think Mason being in high school now, there's a lot of film on him. There's a lot of people know what he does. A lot of times people can scout you, and especially with Mason, who has a very unique style of wrestling, loves his go-behinds. People are going to start picking up on things and try to do things. It's like Austin Asano. It took a few years, but people are starting wrestling with their hand behind their back. And now we see RBY wrestling him in the NCAA tournament, with his hand tucked behind his back so he's not able to tie him up. So you may start seeing things like that. 136 pounds, Scott Johnson from Muncie beats Chad Ozias from Connellsville 5-2. I thought Scott Johnson, a state runner-up this year, lost to Joey Fisher in the state finals. I thought he looked very, very good and solid against Chad Ozias. 140, Briar Priest, 140-pounder from Hempfield, won a state title this year at 132 pounds, beating Dylan Chappell in the finals. He beats Zach Whitmer from St. Joe's 6-2. Zach Whitmer, 4-time state medalist from St. Joe's, going to Columbia. And Briar Priest took care of business with him. One of my favorite matches had to be 141. That was Jude Swisher of Bellefonte over Ian Oswald of Burrell. Oswald, of course, a 2-time state runner-up to Brock McMillan. Jude Swisher was able to beat him 1-0. What were your thoughts on that match, Eric?
Great match there. And, first off, credit to the guys like Burrell, Oswald and Corrado, who wrestled the day before in the team duels and then are willing to say, hey, yeah, I'll put it on the line again against a really good opponent in the King of the Keystone. So a couple guys that did that on different teams, and that's awesome to see. As you said, whenever guys are sometimes like, well, maybe I don't want to wrestle in an all-star match right now. Season just ended, got freestyle coming up, whatever. These guys are willing to go out there and put their toe back on the line right away again.
Yeah, it's actually really nice to see that, because a lot of times you win a state title or you do something really well and you just kind of like, I'm going to go into cruise control. 142 pounds, Dylan Evans had a 8-through win over Amon Ol from St. Joe's Academy. Another really good performance by Dylan Evans. I think, he's kind of a sleeping giant. We saw him knock off Kyle Houseman at the state tournament, come back, take fourth. I think he's going to be a force in the next 2 years. I think he's a state title contender in the next 2 years of high school. 150 pounds, Levi Haynes over John Altieri, 8-1. That was a very impressive performance by Levi Haynes. And Levi Haynes is one of the best in the state of Pennsylvania. I'd put him, Dayton Pitzer, they're especially in Double A. Levi Haynes is absolutely a stud. Whoever lands him in his college is really getting a gem there, because he made John Altieri look, not like a state runner-up and a guy who's going to Clarion as a highly touted wrestler. Levi Haynes just really poured it on him.
Yeah, Haynes is one of my favorite guys to watch. He's just phenomenal. And every time I see him, and I think about that bracket last year, it was because he beat Jackson Arrington, who I think belongs in that conversation you're saying about
for sure
best guys in the state, Double A or Triple A. He beat Arrington last year, and then Crookham beat him. So I mean, what a bracket that was, huh? At the state tournament last year.
That was an incredible tournament. Bracket. It reminds me of the Cole Matthews, Max Murin, and Brian Courtney brackets, right? You have three guys, state champions.
Don't forget John Gabriel in there too.
And John Gabriel from the Pride of Bedford. You're right. So 158 pounds, Panera Johnson really looked good against Michael Dugan of Boylan Springs. Panera Johnson, of course, a 4-time state medalist from Erie Cathedral Prep, going to Iowa State, really poured it on, got a major 15-6. Man, he's just a lot of fun to watch, and I think he's going to excel at the next level. I really do, especially once he gets into a college program. 176 pounds, Lance Urbis beat Jake Jones. I accidentally tweeted out Josh Jones, his older brother, and Brad Wilson was all over it.
On it.
Of course I did. I'm a lack of sleep. I'm doing 100 things, and I slip. I say Josh Jones. It's not like it's his brother or anything. It was Jake Jones. Josh Jones did get on Twitter and let us know that it was not him. It was his brother Jake. But Lance Urbis, great win over him. Lance had a good win over Sammy Starr in the state consolation semifinals at 172 pounds, ended up taking fourth this year. He's headed to Penn next year. Ethan Rossman at 189 beat Wesley Barnes 3-1. I don't know if you saw that match, Eric, but it looked like a very contrasting body styles. Wesley Barnes looked kind of tiny next to Rossman. Did you notice that?
I did not get to see that one.
Well, Wesley Barnes looked significantly smaller than Rossman. Rossman was able to get a takedown in the third period to win at 3-1. Nathan Taylor beat Billy McChesney from Greensburg-Salem. Nathan Taylor, of course, Lehigh recruit. He was a state champion this year from Brookville. He won 3-1 in a tight match. Dayton Pitzer beats 3-time Utah state champion and a Sanderson Wrestling Academy product, Lucas Cochran. Dayton Pitzer beats him 7-0. Man, Dayton Pitzer looks good. And of course, that's 200 pounds, right? So he wrestled 215, probably is really a naturally 195 pounder, but man, he looked really good. 7-0 over a guy who, is highly touted, Eric.
Yeah, I thought he was going to get the fall there too. I mean, Pitzer's just, as we said before, outside of Nick Feldman, I mean, he seems like he can take on just about anybody in that weight range. Yeah,
and I think that really shows you how good Nick Feldman is, right? I mean, because you see how good Dayton Pitzer is, but all of a sudden you're like, Nick Feldman's beat him twice, and not convincingly, but he's beat him pretty good. 165 pounds, a rematch of True Power. We saw this match back in October. Eric Gibson over AJ Corrado. Bishop McCourt versus Burrell, 10-5. Eric Gibson looked really, really sharp. I hate to just wonder, where he would be if he had been in the state tournament, likely at 152, probably could have been a state champion at either weight. And I said that, and people are, oh, well, he was well rested. Look, he's beaten Avery Bassett before. He's beaten AJ Corrado before. He's beaten Grant McKay before. Like, I don't care how long he's been off. In fact, I think that's actually not a good thing, right?
No, because absolutely not.
So take it for what it is. I'm standing by. Eric Gibson would have been a state champ at either weight had he been able to wrestle. So good action there at the Nittany Lion Wrestling Club last night, Eric. And, we may have something up our sleeves. Be on the lookout. Let's just put it there. We'll be on the lookout for something coming from PA Power Wrestling. Really excited about it. I know you are really excited about it, Eric, and we'll be telling you about it real soon. So don't you worry. You're gonna have to hold on to your chairs just a little bit longer. Greg Warnock and I are gonna be doing a War Up episode on Wednesday. So make sure
Can I call in and yell at him?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely.
I gotta find out what he said first.
Yeah. Go back and listen to it. Watch what he said so you can have a proper rebuttal. But yeah, I would definitely come in and talk to Greg about some of the things he said to you. But that's coming up Wednesday. We're going to have some folks from Waynesburg on to talk about the championship title. And, of course, we're going to preview the Pittsburgh Wrestling Classic that's going down on Friday. So a lot of good stuff coming this week and some big news from PA Power Wrestling coming as well. So make sure you stay tuned in to PA Power Wrestling. Eric, any closing remarks, thoughts, questions, comments, concerns?
Just a fun episode. As you said, we got to learn a lot from Tanner about what's going on with the recruiting process and how guys can get some help, and gals presumably, with how they can look to move on to their college career. So I thought that was really some interesting info that he was able to pass along to us.
Yeah, the word that comes to mind is insightful, right? It was very insightful, and I'm telling you, just in talking to him for the few hours that I have over the last couple of months, he knows his stuff, right? He's going to help out a lot of wrestlers. They just have to take advantage of it. So don't worry, we are going to get you all that information on how to start that process. Again, he had mentioned you get a free consultation. You can just call and set up a 30-minute call, and he can just walk you through. And what he told me was, he's like, not everyone that calls is a right fit. Maybe it's a kid that's hey, I want to go Division I, and I don't care about other divisions, and maybe it's somebody who's just they don't fit, right? So make sure you definitely look into that, and again, be on the lookout for that information, because we'll be providing that for you. So Eric, you better go back and watch that War Up episode so you can find out what Greg said about you.
I'm coming for you, Warnock.
Okay, you're heard here first. Thank you for tuning in to the PA Power Hour. You keep it classy, wrestling fans. We'll talk to you very soon. See ya.